Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this session. So, MDI Gurgaon has made a interesting change in their admission criteria for this particular year for those who applied to them through CAT 2025. And hence, we believe that this is the right time to do a session on this particular change. Now, what change am I talking about here? Of course, I'm talking about BAT or Behavioral Assessment Test that has been introduced for the very first time by MDI Gurgaon in this year's admission process. So there are a lot of queries of students, a lot of uncertainty among the students. A lot of students are a little anxious also, and they wanted us to give them an idea about what possibly this test would be. So we decided to do a session on this. So attend the whole session. At the end of the session, if you have got some queries, if you want some more clarifications, do feel free. Send me your questions and I'll try to answer them towards the end of my session. All right. So without any further ado, let's get started with this. So to start with, as you know, MDI Gurgaon has a pretty rich legacy. So this business school, it started more than 50 years back. So it started in early 1970s. So it has got more than half a century of legacy. In fact, if you look at the kind of alumni base that they have got, definitely we can say with confidence, MDI Gurgaon surely can compete with any of the other premier business schools of India. Now, if you look at MDI Gurgaon's standing, if you look at their B school categorization as far as time is concerned, we do count them among the AAA plus category of business schools. So we do believe that they are one of the top 20 business schools of India. Even NIRF gives them very good ranking, and they also have got international accreditations. So definitely you can say with confidence that MDI surely has a rich legacy, and definitely MDI should be a dream destination for any management aspirant in India. Now, if you analyze the admission criteria and then the way they are going to admit the students through CAT 25, let's look at the final selection criteria. I'm not going to focus on the shortlisting criteria because the shortlist is already out. So I believe there's no point in discussing that. So let us focus on the final selection criteria that MDI Gurgaon will use. So MDI Gurgaon in their final selection has decided to give these as the parameters and the weightages that they will assign to each of those parameters. So the CAT would have a humongous weightage of 35%. Ladies and gentlemen, if you give a cursory glance, this is by far the highest amount of weightage for any of the parameters. So doing well in CAT, it serves a dual purpose. On one hand, it helps you get this much coveted interview call. On the other hand, CAT also enables you to convert that call. So in case your CAT percentile is high, you do have an edge over others. Having said that, in case you don't have a very high CAT percentile, you just barely cross the cutoff. The good news still for you is if you look at the other aspects, especially interview, GD, and essay, if you do well in these areas, that matches this weightage. So on one hand, if CAT has 35% weightage, GD, essay, and PI together again have 35% weightage. In fact, if you add BAT to this, it becomes 40% weightage. So point I'm trying to make here essentially is, even if you are somebody who has barely crossed the cutoff and you are invited for the interview round, do not panic. Don't be dejected. Try to prepare well for interviews. Try to do good preparation for group discussion, essay writing, BAT, and I'm sure you will be able to convert your call. Interestingly, BAT got introduced this year, as I was telling you earlier, and the weightage to behavioral assessment test would be 5%. So in terms of weightage, BAT doesn't have high weightage. So don't have any kind of phobia with regard to this. It has got only 5% weightage in the selection process. But remember, it is mandatory to write BAT. Anybody who skips BAT, they have clearly said that they will not be considered in the final selection round. So do remember, definitely write BAT without any doubt. Now, apart from this, you will have WAT, which is nothing but essay writing. And again, same 5% weightage will be there for essay writing also. Interestingly, group discussion has higher weightage. Group discussion will have 10% weightage. That means after CAT and interview, perhaps the next most important parameter would be group discussion along with work experience. So do remember, doing a good job in group discussion can really make a humongous difference. So in case you have got a call from MDI, please do ensure you join the GWPI program of T.I.M.E, and so that you get good preparation for group discussion, essay writing, as well as interview. Personal interview has the next highest weightage after CAT of 20%. So it's a pretty high weightage that they are giving to interview performance also. Interestingly, they also give weightage to graduation. So graduation percentage of yours will have 5% weightage. Now, to encourage diversity, what they have done is they have introduced three different types of diversity. To begin with, academic diversity. Now, this 2.5% will be given to all non-engineer applicants. Then we have gender diversity, where all non-male applicants will be given 2.5% weightage. Now, interestingly, MDI has also introduced this concept of regional diversity. Now, who will get this marks for regional diversity? See, applicants who belong to Jammu and Kashmir or who belong to northeast part of India, they will be given 2.5% weightage by MDI during the final selection stage. So people who belong to rest of the India, apart from Jammu, Kashmir, and Northeast, if you belong to other areas of India, you will get a zero here. But people of those two areas, that is Northeastern India and Jammu, Kashmir, they will be given 2.5% weightage. This has been done to increase a representation from that part also. Then, interestingly, sports also has been given 2.5% weightage. Now, when I say sports, who will get this weightage? Only those applicants will get the weightage who have participated in sports either at national level or international level. The other levels, district level, city level, municipality levels, college level, school level, no, they are not going to get any marks. Only national level and international level participation in sports will be given 2.5% weightage. Work experience will account for 10% weightage. So these four things, 2.5, 2.5, 2.5, and 2.5 will add up to 10% weightage. So this is how MDI Gurgaon will carry out the final selection criteria. Please understand that doing well in each of these areas that are there in your control should be your priority. Don't worry about aspects which are beyond your control. Don't ponder over the fact that you are a fresher, you don't have any work ex. Don't ponder over the fact that you may or may not be eligible for any of these diversity points. Fair enough, that is beyond your control. So be it. What is there in your control? You can perform well in WAT. You can perform well in group discussion. You can do a good job in personal interview. That needs to be your focus as far as preparation goes. All right. So this is how MDI will carry out the final selection process. Now, let's move on to BAT. Now, as far as the MDI Behavioral Assessment Test is concerned, what exactly is this? See, the name itself conveys, right? It's essentially a test of your behavior, right? It basically assesses your personality traits. What are the traits that you have got? That is what they are trying to figure out. And that is what they will figure out by means of this particular test. So it's almost like a psychometric test which actually evaluates your personality, which tries to figure out the kind of behavioral tendencies that you've got. And more importantly, are you a good cultural mix for MDA or not? Is what they are trying to basically figure out. See, when you look at this institution, they obviously will have certain kind of expectations from their students, certain kind of traits that they would like to have in their students. So they are trying to evaluate you and they are trying to figure out whether you do have those traits that they are looking for, what kind of behavior tendencies they've got, and what kind of decision-making approach do you take, and would you be fit for their MBA program is what they are trying to figure out. Now, remember, this test is not like the other aptitude test you might have written. It's not like CAT exam or XAT exam or SNAP exam, etc., that you might have written. It's not like that. This is not an academic knowledge test. So in this test, there won't be any right or wrong answers the way we generally deal with in these particular exam. It's simply trying to figure out whether you fit into their program or not by gauging your personality. So that is MDI-BAT. Now, the format and structure of this exam, try and understand that. So the examination date has been announced when they announce the shortlist for MDI. They have already communicated to you. If you have a call of MDI, you would know that the examination would be conducted on 25th of Jan, which happens to be the same day as CMAT. That is the unfortunate part. They should not have scheduled it on the day of CMAT, but they did that. Now, keep that in mind because the examination has been scheduled at morning 11 o'clock. Now, remember, this examination, you don't have to travel to the test center. You can write this exam remotely. And because this is conducted online, and remember, I already told you, it is absolutely mandatory to write this exam. Absolutely mandatory. Do not skip this exam, my friend. Many people, they are asking us, is it necessary? I want to write CMAT. Can I skip it? Kind of thing. Absolutely no. If you skip this exam, then you will be out of the selection process. MDI has already mentioned that clearly. So it is absolutely mandatory to write this test. So don't skip it. Now, number of questions, we expect them obviously to be multiple questions. The exact number of questions has not been revealed by MDI so far, but definitely there'll be multiple questions. In fact, most of the times these kind of tests, they put in good number of questions and they give less amount of duration because they force you to go with your first instinct. So they force you to attempt questions very, very fast so that they can evaluate you better. That's usually the nature of these kind of tests. Now, what kind of responses would be there? Please understand, I'm again repeating myself. This is not an aptitude test. This is not a mathematics, logical reasoning kind of test. So here, there will not be any right or wrong answers. So it's not like mathematics where only one numerical value will be correct, anything else will be wrong. It's not like that. Here, there are no right or wrong answers. Here, you can instead say there will be ideal answers and non-ideal answers. So when I'm using this term ideal and I'm saying non-ideal, I'm not saying they're right or wrong. I'm just saying from their point of view, MDI's point of view, certain responses may be ideal and certain responses may not be ideal. So there is no right or wrong here. It's only ideal and non-ideal from their point of view. And what they are going to focus is essentially how consistent you are with your responses, how authentic you are with your responses. They would not like to have students who lie in the exam, who don't reveal their real personality. So they want consistent response. For some of the questions, if you are showing that you are a very ethical person, but for most of the other responses or some of the other responses, you are showing that you're not an ethical person, that consistency should not be lacking. That is what they are trying to figure out. And they're also trying to figure out whether you're authentic in your responses or not. Now, what exactly are they trying to look for? What traits can they evaluate? Now, it's not an exhaustive list that I'm going to share, but an indicative list. So they are going to look at what kind of potential you have with regard to leadership. So a leader needs certain traits, right? So they may try to figure out which of those traits do you have, or do you really have that potential to be a good leader or not? How do they do that? They'll create questions. All right, they'll create questions. What kind of questions? I'm going to talk about it later on. So I'm not giving you any sample questions as of now. I'm going to give you some examples later on. They also may try to figure out, are you somebody who is capable of working in a team? How comfortable you are working in a team, preferably of a diverse set of individuals. Can you collaborate? Can you work together? They may try to figure that out. Importantly, they can also try and figure out, are you an ethical individual or not? How much importance do you give to ethics and morals? That is of primary importance for any business school, including MDI. Because remember, you are ambassadors of these business schools. You will finish your MBA, you will become an alumnus of that business school. So you will have to behave in a right kind of manner, or else you can end up bringing disrepute to the institution. See, they say that 100 good alumni, whatever goodwill they create, one bad alumnus can destroy all that goodwill. So business schools are very particular about ethical conduct. So they may also figure out, are you ethical in nature, in the way you conduct yourself, your behavior, they can check that out. They can also figure out whether you have the emotional intelligence in you or not. Remember, many people have IQ, but then EQ is equally important. So they'll try to figure that out also. How capable are you to adapting to different scenarios, and how capable are you with regard to the stress handling also can be evaluated. Finally, how good are you at decision making? Because remember, again, decision making is going to be an important quality to have when it comes to managerial roles, when it comes to leadership roles. So that again can be tested through with this particular test. Now, I'm not saying this is the exhaustive list because so many other traits can be tested. For example, do you have a lot of patience in you or not can be tested. Are you somebody who is good at communication with others? That can be tested. So many aspects can be tested other than these also. Now, how should you approach to these questions? Now, my recommendation is people often ask us, sir, should I honestly answer these questions or should I lie and should I start giving ideal responses, assuming what they probably would be looking for? Our recommendation to you is do honestly answer this question. The reason we say that is because what I said earlier, they want consistency in your responses. So if you don't answer it honestly, then the consistency will be missing in your answers. So please do answer honestly. Don't try to lie in this test. Now, reading questions carefully before responding is definitely something that we would recommend you, because see, point is, if you are extremely nervous and you don't even pay attention to the wording of the question, sometimes the meaning of the question changes based on the wording, right? So you have to read questions very carefully, only then answer them. And as I said, maintain consistency across similar questions. That is something that definitely the business school will try to figure out. If there are 10 questions on ethics, they will try to see your responses for those 10 answers. Is there any consistency or not is something that they will try to look at. Now, there are certain common myths that people have about this exam. Let me address those myths. To start with, people believe that there's a correct answer for every question. Please understand the way questions is designed. There is no right or wrong answer here. As I said, there is only ideal and non-ideal, but even in ideal, there may be multiple options given. I'm going to give you some sample questions. Then you will understand it much better. So do understand that there's no right or wrong answer here. It's not a mathematics question where there is only one correct answer. Here, there will be a series of options given, and there is nothing like correct or wrong. It is only ideal and non-ideal. Now, people have this notion that you can prepare your answers in advance. Not possible, because they can create any kind of question with any kind of hypothetical scenario, and it's not recommended. It's not possible to prepare answers in advance. So please go there with an open mind and try to answer the questions to the best of your ability in a very honest and confident manner as such. I'll give you tips on how to answer these questions after some time. When I give you a couple of samples, I'll also explain what to avoid when you mark the answer. I'm going to talk about that also. Now, don't try to lie. Don't try to impress the evaluators. Just try to be honest and be consistent with your responses. Finally, remember, this test evaluates who exactly you are, what kind of personality traits you've got. And they don't really want to figure out who you are trying to pretend to be. They're only interested in knowing who exactly you are in a very honest and transparent manner. That is what MDI is trying to figure out. Now, what are the mistakes that we want you to avoid? First and foremost, don't overthink. Questions will be very simple. Try and read it very carefully. As I said earlier, try and understand the question. But once you've understood the question, go ahead and mark whichever option you believe is the most honest and whatever you believe in. If you keep overthinking, then you may run out of time, number one. You may not be able to attempt all the questions. And number two, that consistency aspect will be lost somewhere if you start lying. All right. And then, of course, don't, as I said earlier, be consistent with your response. If you try to give desirable answers from their point of view, then the consistency will be missing. But don't rush through the test. As I said, read the questions very carefully and then answer them. Don't change your natural stance. Go with your honest responses for these questions. That is something that we would recommend. That's the reason this is not a test where you have to do any kind of prior preparation. As long as you are having an awareness about what this test is all about, I think that should be more than sufficient. All right. Now let us take some sample questions so that you get a better understanding of what I'm trying to say. See that these questions, because they are doing it for the very first time, nobody knows exactly what kind of questions will come. But I'll give you a broad idea about what possibly may happen. Let me give you different scenarios. So one way of creating the questions could be they can directly create a question which will try to figure out your personality traits. For example, let's say we have a question like it is okay to lie if it doesn't hurt anyone. So the question may say it is okay to lie. It is okay to make false statements. It's okay to lie if it doesn't hurt anyone. Now, interestingly, options, the way they can frame those options, they may either make it yes or no, but that is very unlikely. If there is only yes or no as choices, then the possible answers will be only two, right? So 50% chance if you go with your guess that it may be correct or it may be ideal, I should say, not correct, but ideal response. So generally, they usually for these kind of tests, they avoid yes or no kind of responses. Most of the times they give you five, sometimes seven options. So let's take an example of, let's say, what if they give you five options? What kind of options can they give? So I repeat my question. It's okay to lie if it doesn't hurt anyone. So they may give you options like, let's say, strongly disagree. That could be the first option. Second option could be disagree. The third option could be, let's say, maybe. The fourth option may be agree. And the last option would be strongly agree, right? If I want to make it seven options, what will I do? I'll probably add two more. For a strongly agree and strongly disagree and disagree, I'll add another one out here, which say mildly disagree, or maybe after maybe I will say mildly disagree, mildly agree. It becomes seven options. So it may be five options, it may be seven options, it may be three options, depending on what they want, how many options they want you to have. So this could be one way of framing the question. Now, I repeat my question. It's okay to lie if it doesn't hurt anyone. Now, depending on what your honest response is, you can go with that. Only suggestion that I would say is usually it's not a thumb rule, but usually it's not a good idea to go with extreme answers. So strongly disagree, strongly agree. The extreme answers, it's possible. It's better to avoid those and go with somewhere in middle as such. So disagree or agree, maybe. I mean, the middle ones are much more advisable, unless and until it's a question which is talking very clearly about ethics. If it's absolute ethics-based question and you are saying that it's very important to be ethical, then it's okay. Otherwise, generally going to the two extremes can be avoided. Now, is it necessary to only these kind of questions will be there? Not really. Sometimes they may create a scenario for you and they may try to figure out your response. Let me give you one more example. Let's say the question says you are walking down a road and you see let's say 2000 rupee note lying on the ground. You're walking in a road and you see a 2000 rupee note lying on the road. You will keep it. You will keep it. This is the question. And then options are disagree, strongly disagree, disagree, maybe, agree, strongly agree, let's say. Now, what are they trying to figure out? They have presented a scenario. They said you are walking on a road, a 2000 rupee note is lying on the road. Now, obviously, that note doesn't belong to you. It is somebody else's. Will you keep it is the question. All right. Or will you spend it? Will you keep it? Now, obviously, what are they trying to figure out? They are trying to figure out whether you are ethical in your conduct or not. Because that note doesn't belong to you, it belongs to somebody else. So it's not your property. So would you use it? Will you spend it? Will you keep it? Obviously, they have a hidden agenda when they created this question, right? I'll give you one more example of hypothetical situation. Let's say I create a question like, I don't use internet. I do not use internet if the internet speed is very slow, even if it is an urgent assignment to be done. So the question says there is an urgent assignment that you have to submit, but because the internet speed is slow, you will not use the internet. Now, again, what are they trying to figure out with this kind of hypothetical scenario? They're trying to figure out whether you have patience or not, whether you can stick with it or not. So these kind of hypothetical scenarios can also get created with this kind of test. So do remember, the examiner may directly frame a question which will try to check your personality trait, or indirectly also the examiner can try to figure out your personality trait or your behavior trait as such. So there are a variety of ways in which these questions can be designed. Another approach that sometimes people take is they may not go with this kind of options. So don't assume that definitely these options will be there in exam. Not necessary. Sometimes the examiner can do it the way they do it in XAT decision making. In XAT decision making, you don't have strongly agree and so on, right? You might have written XAT. You might be aware of this. So they may give you a short story and then options can be there. When I say short story, it will be very, very short story. It won't be like what you had in XAT with a huge paragraph. No, just two, three lines of story, and probably the options, instead of being strongly disagree, and so on, they will give you various courses of action. For example, let me go back to the same example. Uh, you are walking on the road, you see a 2000 rupee note lying on the ground. What will you do? The question can say, what will you do? And then I'll give you four options or five options. First option, I will completely ignore the 2000 rupee note and I'll walk. Second option may say, I will pick up that 2000 rupee note and I'll keep it in my pocket and I'll spend it. The third option says, I will take the 2000 rupee note, but I'll call around and I will ask people around if somebody has lost that note. The last option, let's say I'll take up that note, I'll go to the nearby police station and I will say that I found it lying on the ground, and I'll request the police department people to try to find out the owner and return it to them. Something like that. Now, this could be another way of framing the questions, but the more usual kind of questions that you typically find in these kind of tests are the first ones that I discussed earlier, where the options were strongly disagree, maybe, agree, strongly agree, something like that is much more usual in these kind of tests. But I thought that you people should also know that these kind of questions can also be created if the examiner wants. Since MDI is doing it for the very first time, I thought that you people should be aware of various possibilities that may happen on the day of examination. All right, friends. So I hope you people got a good amount of idea about what this test is all about. There's no need to panic. It is just a simple test of your behavior and your personality. Just go out there and honestly try the questions. So if you have got any questions for me, if you have got any queries, please use the option to send a question and I will answer your questions now. So let me take up some questions. I can also already see. All right, Samir Mehra says, good evening, sir. Good evening to you, Samir. If you have a question, Samir, do share your question. Uh, all right. So one more question that somebody asked me was, Neha says, sir, how many questions would be there in the test? It has not been revealed so far, but surely there may be multiple questions in the test, Neha, and they may keep the duration also on the lower side so that you are forced to answer the questions in a very short span of time so that your honest answers, your genuine answers are captured. That's usually how these tests work. All right. Umesh says this, will it be similar to what we faced in MyCat exam? There is a possibility of it being similar to that. Yes, there is, because that is also a psychometric test, but we can only say for sure on 25th of Jan as such. All right. So I guess with this, I have come to the end of this session. I have answered your questions. So please don't worry much. Just try and prepare properly. And, on the day of the exam, try to be consistent with your response. That's the most important advice that I can give you. And don't panic. You'll be very cool and calm, composed, and try to answer the questions to the best of your ability as such. All right, so with this, we have come to the end of this session. I hope you people got a complete understanding about how these exams work, how this test works, and now you will be in a better position to write this test. So on behalf of everybody at Time, I wish you all the best.